If you heard someone whisper your name from inside an abandoned mansion at 2 in the morning, would you walk away, or would your curiosity become the reason no one ever sees you again? What happened in Pine Ridge during the fall of 1998 was never printed in any newspaper because the truth was too terrifying for anyone to believe. Some people still avoid the old road leading into Redwood Hill Manor because on quiet nights a deep hollow voice drifts through the trees asking only one question: where is my head? The people who hear those words are never the same again. Pine Ridge was a small mountain town hidden deep inside the forests of Oregon. The town looked peaceful during the day. Children rode their bicycles through quiet streets. Families greeted each other with warm smiles. Tourists stopped at the local diner before driving toward the nearby hiking trails. Everything looked normal. But after sunset, the entire town changed. Every house locked its doors before midnight. Every window stayed covered. Nobody walked near Redwood Hill Manor after dark. Parents warned their children never to follow strange voices coming from the woods. Even hunters refused to enter that part of the forest. Nobody explained why. Everyone simply knew one thing: if the forest suddenly became silent, you needed to leave immediately, because something had already noticed you. Far beyond the last house in town stood Redwood Hill Manor. The mansion had once belonged to Captain Lucien Blackwood, a decorated military officer who disappeared more than 100 years earlier. According to the oldest town records, Captain Blackwood returned home after a bloody war carrying several locked wooden crates. Nobody ever discovered what was inside them. Only a few days later, every servant working inside the mansion vanished without leaving behind a single clue. When the sheriff finally entered the estate, he found blood covering the walls, broken furniture scattered across every room, deep claw marks carved into the wooden floors. But Captain Blackwood was gone. His body was never found. Only one terrifying detail remained: a trail of blood leading into the basement. The basement itself was completely empty. Since that day, strange disappearances surrounded the mansion. Campers, hunters, photographers, treasure seekers, none of them returned. People claimed they could hear heavy military boots walking through empty hallways long after midnight. Others swore they saw a tall man standing near broken windows, a man wearing an old military uniform, a man with no head. Most people dismissed those stories as local legends, until one cold October night. Jake Sullivan believed fear was nothing more than a weakness. He laughed every time someone mentioned ghosts. He spent most evenings drinking inside the local bar while making fun of anyone who believed in supernatural stories. That night, he had already emptied several bottles before stumbling outside. The cold wind hit his face. His friends warned him not to take the forest road. Jake laughed. He shouted that he would spend the entire night inside Redwood Hill Manor just to prove everyone wrong. Nobody followed him. They simply watched him disappear into the darkness. The forest felt strangely different that night. There were no insects, no birds, no sound except the wind moving through dead branches. Jake kept walking. His flashlight barely reached beyond a few feet. Suddenly he noticed something unusual. Every tree around him carried deep cuts across the bark. The marks looked almost identical, like someone had repeatedly struck them with an enormous blade. The deeper he walked, the colder the air became. His breath turned white. The smell of wet earth slowly changed into something far worse: rotting flesh. Jake covered his nose. He cursed under his breath and continued forward. Then he saw it. Redwood Hill Manor. The enormous building stood on top of a small hill surrounded by dying trees. Its broken windows reflected the moonlight like hundreds of empty eyes watching every movement. The front gate slowly moved on its rusted hinges even though there was no wind. Jake forced himself to laugh. He stepped inside the property. The gate slammed shut behind him. His smile disappeared. He turned around. Nobody stood near the gate. He pulled hard, trying to open it. It refused to move. His heartbeat became faster. Still, he convinced himself there had to be a logical explanation. He walked toward the front entrance. The old wooden door was already open. Inside the mansion, darkness swallowed everything. His flashlight revealed long abandoned hallways covered with dust. Old portraits stared down from cracked walls. Every face seemed damaged. Every painting showed the same strange detail. Each person was missing their head. Jake frowned. That was impossible. Why would anyone destroy every painting in exactly the same way? Before he could think further, a loud sound echoed upstairs. Heavy footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Each step shook the wooden floor. Jake called out, "Hello, is someone here?" No answer came. Only another step, then another, then complete silence. He climbed the staircase. Every stair creaked beneath his weight. The air became freezing cold. His flashlight flickered. For a brief second, darkness surrounded him. When the light returned, someone stood at the end of the hallway. A tall soldier wearing a black military coat. standing perfectly still. Jake smiled nervously. Finally another person. Hey buddy, you almost scared me. The figure never moved. Jake took another step. The flashlight beam reached the figure. His hands began shaking. The soldier had no head, only an empty neck covered in dried black blood. The figure slowly lifted one hand. A cracked rusted sword pointed directly toward Jake. Then a voice whispered beside his ear, "Where is my head?" Jake spun around so quickly that he nearly fell down the staircase. Nobody stood behind him. The hallway was completely empty. His breathing became louder than the wind outside. He pointed the flashlight in every direction. Nothing. The headless soldier had disappeared. Jake laughed nervously, trying to convince himself he had imagined everything because of the alcohol. He slowly turned back toward the hallway. The figure was gone. Only dusty floorboards stretched into darkness. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. This place was playing tricks on his mind. That had to be the explanation. Then something wet landed on his shoulder. He froze. Another drop touched his hand. He slowly looked down. Dark red blood. Fresh. Warm. His hands trembled as he raised the flashlight toward the ceiling. Hundreds of bloody handprints covered the wood above him. Another drop fell directly onto his face. Jake stumbled backward. The ceiling cracked with a loud snap. For a split second he thought someone was crawling above him. Long scraping sounds echoed through the walls, like fingernails dragging across old wood. The noise followed him wherever he moved. He rushed downstairs. The front door was only a few steps away. He grabbed the handle. It would not open. He kicked it with all his strength. Nothing happened. His heartbeat pounded inside his ears. He pulled harder. Still nothing. Then every light inside the mansion flashed at once. Old chandeliers hanging from the ceiling suddenly burst into life. A dim yellow glow spread across the entrance hall. Jake slowly stepped backward. The room no longer looked abandoned. The broken furniture was gone. The dusty walls looked freshly painted. The torn curtains were now spotless. A long dining table stood in the center of the hall, covered with silver plates and burning candles. It looked as if someone had prepared dinner only moments earlier. Jake stared in disbelief. The mansion had changed. Soft piano music floated through the air. A woman's laughter echoed from somewhere deeper inside the house. Several voices began talking at once. Dozens of people, laughing, drinking, celebrating. Yet Jake could not see a single person. The chairs around the table slowly pulled away on their own. One chair remained empty, waiting. Jake felt something pushing gently against his back. He stumbled forward until he stood beside the empty chair. The chair slid backward, inviting him to sit. His legs refused to move. Then every voice inside the mansion stopped together. Complete silence swallowed the room. A deep voice spoke from the far end of the table. "You are late." Jake looked toward the darkness. Someone slowly emerged from the shadows. An elderly woman wearing a faded black dress. Her skin looked pale as stone. Her cloudy white eyes never blinked. She smiled without opening her lips. "Captain Blackwood has been waiting for you." Jake stepped away from the table. "Who are you?" The woman ignored the question. She slowly lifted one trembling finger toward the staircase. "He is angry tonight. He still cannot find what was stolen from him." Jake backed away. "I am leaving." The woman suddenly laughed. A dry, lifeless laugh that echoed through every room. Nobody leaves after hearing his voice. Jake turned and ran. He sprinted through the nearest hallway, searching for another exit. Every door he opened led into the same hallway again. Every window showed only darkness. No forest. No moon. Only endless blackness. He slammed another door open. This time he entered a massive library. Thousands of old books filled wooden shelves reaching the ceiling. A large fireplace burned brightly. The fire looked strangely blue. An old journal rested on a table beside the flames. Its pages turned by themselves until one page stopped, as if something wanted him to read it. Jake slowly walked closer. The paper looked ancient. Dark stains covered the edges. He leaned forward. The handwriting was shaky. "If anyone finds this journal, do not trust what you see inside this house. The manor feeds on guilt. It shows every visitor exactly what they fear. But the captain is real. He walks without a head because his own men betrayed him. They buried his head somewhere beneath this house. Now he searches forever. Every victim becomes another pair of eyes searching with him." Jake swallowed hard. His hands shook uncontrollably. He flipped the page. The next sentence made his blood run cold. "If you are reading this, then he already knows your name." Before Jake could turn another page, a loud metallic sound echoed behind him. Clang, 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 like an old sword dragging across stone. The sound grew louder, closer, slower. Jake did not turn around. Every instinct told him not to look. Then icy breath touched the back of his neck. A whisper crawled into his ear. "Jake Sullivan, have you seen my head?" Jake screamed and spun around. The library was empty. Only the blue fire continued burning. Then he noticed fresh muddy footprints leading toward a narrow wooden door hidden behind one of the bookshelves. The door had not been there before. It slowly creaked open by itself. From somewhere below came the sound of heavy military boots. One step, then another, getting closer with every second. Jake stood frozen in the library staring at the hidden door. Every part of his mind was screaming at him to run. But something stronger than fear pulled him forward. A strange curiosity. A need to know what was hiding beneath Redwood Hill Manor. The footsteps below stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound itself. Jake slowly picked up the old journal and held it tightly. He walked toward the hidden doorway. The moment he crossed the entrance, the temperature dropped instantly. The blue flames in the library disappeared. The door behind him slammed shut. Jake turned around and grabbed the handle. It would not move. He was trapped. A narrow staircase led deep underground. The stone walls were covered with strange symbols carved into them. Some looked like military signs. Others looked like warnings. Do not disturb the forgotten. Do not call the one without a face. Jake moved his flashlight across the walls. The deeper he went, the more the smell of decay filled the air. The stairs seemed endless. After several minutes, he finally reached the bottom. A massive underground chamber appeared in front of him. The room looked like an old battlefield frozen in time. Broken weapons covered the floor. Rusty helmets lay scattered everywhere. Old military uniforms hung from the walls. In the center of the chamber stood a large stone table. Something was resting on top of it. A human skull. Jake stopped, breathing for a moment. The skull was covered with dried black marks. A metal tag was attached to it. Captain Lucien Blackwood. Jake stepped closer. This was impossible. The missing head of Captain Blackwood had been hidden beneath the mansion all this time. But why was it still here? And who had placed it there? Suddenly the skull moved. Jake jumped back. The empty eye sockets turned toward him. A deep voice echoed through the chamber. You found it. Jake covered his ears. The voice was not coming from the skull. It was coming from everywhere. The walls, the floor, the air itself. A shadow appeared behind him, slowly growing taller. The sound of heavy boots filled the room. Jake turned around. Captain Lucien Blackwood was standing there. The headless soldier looked even more terrifying up close. His old uniform was torn and covered in blood. His body was covered with wounds from a battle that happened more than a century ago. In his hand he held the same rusted sword. Jake fell to his knees. Please, I did not take anything from you. The captain slowly tilted his headless body toward him. A terrible silence followed. Then his voice appeared inside Jake's mind. Everyone says the same thing. The soldier raised his sword slightly. Everyone lies. The chamber suddenly changed. The walls disappeared. Jake found himself standing in a different place. A battlefield. Smoke filled the sky. Hundreds of soldiers were running in every direction. Gunshots echoed everywhere. Jake looked around in confusion. He was no longer inside the mansion. He was witnessing a memory. A memory from Captain Blackwood's past. A younger Lucien Blackwood stood among his soldiers. He was not a monster. He was a leader. His men trusted him. Until one night, several soldiers surrounded him while he slept. The same men he had saved during the war. The same men he called brothers. They attacked him. Lucien fought back, but there were too many. One soldier grabbed him from behind. Another raised a blade. The scene became blurry. Jake watched helplessly as Lucien was forced to the ground. A voice from the soldiers shouted, "The captain knows where the treasure is hidden. He will never tell us." Another soldier replied, "Then he will never need his head again." Jake felt sick. They were not enemies. They were his own people. The soldiers murdered Lucien. They cut off his head and buried it beneath the mansion. But before his final breath, Lucien cursed them. "Anyone who betrays another will become part of my search forever." The battlefield vanished. Jake returned to the underground chamber. The headless captain stood before him. Jake was shaking. "You were betrayed?" The captain remained silent. Then Jake noticed something. The captain was not looking at him. He was looking at the skull on the table. But there was something wrong. The skull was changing. The face was slowly transforming. It was no longer Lucien Blackwood. It was Jake's face. Jake stepped backward in horror. No, this cannot be real." The captain slowly raised his sword. A voice whispered through the chamber. "The house does not choose innocent people. It chooses people carrying the same darkness." Jake remembered everything. The lies he had told. The people he had hurt. The secrets he had hidden. The mansion knew. The captain knew. Suddenly the skull on the table opened its mouth. And Jake heard his own voice coming from inside. "Help me." Jake screamed and ran toward the staircase. But before he reached it, the entire chamber shook violently. The stone floor cracked open. From beneath the ground, hundreds of pale hands reached upward, grabbing his legs, pulling him down. Jake kicked and screamed. but the hands became stronger. The captain watched silently. Then he spoke. "Your search begins tonight." Jake looked up in terror. "What do you mean?" The captain slowly pointed toward the skull. The same words appeared carved into the stone floor. "Every headless soul needs a replacement. And this time, the mansion has chosen you." Jake screamed with all his strength as the pale hands pulled him deeper into the cracked stone floor. He grabbed the edge of the staircase, trying to stop himself. His fingers scratched against the cold stone. But something beneath the mansion was far stronger than him. The more he struggled, the tighter the hands became. Captain Lucien Blackwood stood silently watching. His headless body did not move. His sword rested against the floor. Jake looked at him with tears in his eyes. "Please, I do not belong here." The captain slowly stepped forward. The sound of his boots echoed through the underground chamber. "You entered my home willingly. You searched for what was hidden. You awakened what was forgotten." Jake shook his head. "I only came here to prove a story was fake." The captain raised his sword slightly. "That is what they all say." The floor beneath Jake suddenly disappeared. He fell into darkness. For a moment there was no sound, no movement, no feeling. Then Jake opened his eyes. He was lying inside the mansion's main hallway. Everything looked normal again. The broken walls, the dusty floor, the abandoned furniture. The strange transformation was gone. Jake quickly sat up. His breathing was heavy. He touched his body. No injuries, no blood, nothing. For a few seconds he believed everything was over. Maybe he had fainted. Maybe the entire thing was a nightmare caused by fear and alcohol. Then he noticed something beside him, a small wooden box. The same box he had seen in the underground chamber. His hands started shaking. Slowly he opened it. Inside was an old military badge. Captain Lucien Blackwood's name was carved into it. But beneath the name another word appeared. Jake Sullivan. He dropped the badge immediately. A cold wind moved through the hallway. The candles on the walls suddenly lit one by one. A voice whispered from the darkness. "The first step is always denial." Jake turned around. The old woman from the dining hall was standing behind him. Her pale eyes stared directly at him. Jake moved away. "What do you want from me?" The woman smiled. "I want nothing. He wants everything." She pointed toward the end of the hallway. Jake followed her finger. At first he saw nothing. Then a shadow slowly appeared near the staircase. Captain Blackwood. But something had changed. In his hand was no longer the sword. He was holding a lantern. Inside the lantern burned a strange blue flame. The woman whispered, "Every 100 years the mansion chooses someone new. Someone who carries betrayal inside their heart. Someone who can replace the captain." Jake shook his head. "I am not like those soldiers." The woman walked closer. "Everyone says that before the house shows them the truth." The walls around Jake began changing. The hallway stretched longer. The paintings moved. The faces inside them turned toward him. Then every painting whispered together, "Liar." Jake covered his ears. "Stop." The whispers became louder. "Liar." Suddenly one painting fell from the wall. Jake looked at it. His blood turned cold. The painting showed him standing inside the mansion. But beside him was another figure, a headless soldier. The painting was not showing the present. It was showing the future. Jake stepped backward. "Number. That is impossible." The old woman looked at him. "The mansion never shows lies. It only shows what is waiting." Jake ran toward the front door again. This time it opened. Cold night air rushed inside. The forest was visible outside. Freedom was only a few steps away. He ran. He crossed the entrance. He reached the gate, and then stopped. Something was wrong. The forest looked different. The trees were taller. The town lights were gone. Jake turned around slowly. Redwood Hill Manor stood behind him. But it was not the same mansion. The broken building was now alive. Every window glowed with blue fire. Every room was filled with shadows. Then he looked down. His clothes were different. The modern jacket he was wearing had disappeared. Instead, he was wearing an old military uniform. Jake touched his chest. A metal badge was attached to it. Captain Lucien Blackwood. He fell to his knees. "Number. No, this is not happening." A deep voice came from behind him. "Welcome home, Captain." Jake slowly turned around. The old woman was gone. The headless soldier was gone. Only a mirror stood in front of him. A full-length antique mirror. He looked into it, and his entire body froze. The reflection was not Jake. It was Captain Blackwood's headless body, standing exactly where he was standing. Jake touched his face. The reflection did the same, but slowly, very slowly, a new shape began forming on the empty neck of the reflection. A human head. Jake watched in horror as the face appeared. It was his own face. A scream escaped his mouth, but no sound came out, because something was happening to his body. His voice was disappearing. His skin was becoming colder. His memories were fading. Then a final whisper entered his mind. "The mansion does not kill its victims. It replaces them. And somewhere deep inside Redwood Hill Manor, another person opened the front door. A stranger. A new visitor. Someone who had come looking for the legend of the Headless Captain. And Jake realized the horrifying truth. He was no longer the person trapped inside the mansion. He was the thing waiting for the next victim. The next visitor arrived at Redwood Hill Manor 3 nights later. His name was Owen Parker. Owen was a young documentary filmmaker who traveled across America searching for abandoned places and forgotten legends. He had heard countless stories about Redwood Hill Manor, but he believed every story had a logical explanation. Ghosts were only created by fear. That was what he always said. He arrived in Pine Ridge during a stormy evening. The local people immediately noticed the camera equipment in his hands. The moment he mentioned Redwood Hill Manor, everyone became silent. The old man sitting inside the diner looked at him with worried eyes. "You should leave before sunset." Owen smiled. "Why?" "Because of a ghost story." The old man slowly placed his coffee cup down. "Because some stories are not stories. They are warnings." Owen laughed politely. He had heard the same warning from many people during his travels. Every abandoned place had a legend. Every legend had someone trying to scare visitors away. He thanked the old man and left the diner. But before he reached the door, the old man grabbed his arm. "If you hear someone asking where his head is, do not answer." Owen looked at him confused. "Why?" The old man released his arm. "Because once you answer, he knows your name." That night Owen parked his vehicle near the forest road. The rain was falling heavily. Lightning covered the sky for a few seconds at a time. He turned on his camera and started recording. "Tonight I am entering the most mysterious abandoned mansion in Oregon, Redwood Hill Manor. For more than 100 years people have claimed that a headless soldier protects this place. But tonight we are going to discover the truth." He picked up his flashlight and entered the forest. The same forest that had swallowed countless people before him. But Owen did not know something was watching him from the trees. Something wearing an old military uniform. Something carrying a lantern with a blue flame. Something that was no longer Captain Lucian Blackwood. Because inside the mansion, another soul was controlling that body now. Jake Sullivan, the man who once came searching for a ghost, had become the ghost everyone feared. Deep inside Redwood Hill Manor, Jake stood in the darkness listening to the approaching footsteps. For days he had been trapped inside the mansion. For days he had felt his old memories disappearing. He remembered his name. He remembered his life. But every night the mansion took something away. A childhood memory. A friend's face. A simple moment from his past. Until only one thing remained. The need to find another person. The need to continue the curse. Jake looked into an old mirror hanging on the wall. For a second his old face appeared. His eyes filled with fear. "Help me." A voice inside his mind whispered. "You already received help. Now you must return the gift." Jake grabbed his headless neck. "I am not like you." The mansion walls started shaking. The same deep voice that once terrified him answered. "Everyone says that." The mirror cracked, and a memory appeared inside the broken glass. Jake saw himself walking into the mansion for the first time. But this time he noticed something different. The moment he entered the front gate, his body had disappeared. He was never walking inside the mansion. He was already dead. The mansion had created the illusion of survival. The ghost had not trapped him. The mansion had transformed him. Jake finally understood. Captain Blackwood was never searching for a head. He was searching for a replacement. A person who could carry the curse. A person who could continue the hunt. A person who could bring new victims to the manor. Jake stepped away from the mirror. Fear returned to his heart. But something else was growing inside him. A dark hunger. A voice telling him the visitor must stay. Outside the mansion, Owen reached the front gate. The same gate that had trapped Jake years earlier. The metal slowly opened by itself. Owen smiled and raised his camera. "Perfect. This is exactly what I was hoping to find." He entered the property. The gate closed behind him. Inside the mansion, Jake heard his footsteps. The new visitor had arrived. The blue flame inside the lantern became brighter. Jake slowly picked up the old sword. For the first time in many years, he felt the power of the mansion flowing through him. The hallway lights turned on. The portraits on the walls opened their eyes. Every shadow moved toward the entrance. Jake walked forward, waiting. Owen entered the main hall and looked around. The mansion was silent. Too silent. Then he noticed something on the floor. Fresh footprints. Military boots. Leading toward the darkness. Owen followed them with his camera recording. He whispered, "Someone is living here." But before he could take another step, a heavy sound echoed from upstairs. Clang, clang, clang. Owen lifted his flashlight. A tall figure appeared at the top of the staircase. A figure wearing an old military uniform. A figure without a head. Owen stopped breathing. The legend was real. Then a voice came from the darkness. Where is my head? Owen slowly stepped backward, and for the first time, he understood why nobody ever returned from Redwood Hill Manor. Because the mansion did not want to kill visitors. It wanted someone new to guard this darkness forever. Owen stood completely frozen in the middle of the main hall. His camera was still recording, but his hands were no longer steady. The figure at the top of the staircase did not move. The headless soldier simply stood there watching him, waiting for an answer. Owen swallowed hard. He wanted to run. Every instinct inside him told him to escape, but his curiosity was stronger. He slowly raised his camera and zoomed in. The screen showed something impossible. The soldier was not appearing on the camera. Only the empty staircase was visible. Owen lowered the camera. The figure was still there. He looked again. Nothing. He looked away. The figure returned. His breathing became faster. This was not a normal ghost story. This was something beyond anything he had ever recorded. Suddenly, the headless soldier lifted his hand. The old sword pointed directly at Owen. The voice came again. Where is my head? Owen stepped backward. I don't know what you want. The mansion became silent. Then another voice whispered from behind him. He is lying. Owen turned around quickly. Nobody was there. But the portraits on the walls had changed. Every painting now showed Owen standing inside the mansion. Each painting was different. In one he was holding the camera. In another he was standing beside the headless soldier. And in the final painting, he had no head. Owen's face turned pale. He moved closer to the painting. The image changed again. Now it showed him wearing the same military uniform as the soldier. A cold feeling entered his chest. The mansion was showing him the future. Suddenly the front door slammed shut. Owen ran toward it. He grabbed the handle and pulled. Nothing happened. He pushed harder. Still locked. Then he heard footsteps behind him. Slow, heavy, coming closer. Owen turned around. The headless soldier was no longer at the staircase. He was standing only a few feet away. Owen raised his camera between them. The screen went black. A message appeared. Recording corrupted. Then the camera turned off. The soldier moved closer. Owen whispered, "What happened to you?" For the first time, the headless figure stopped. The room became completely still. Then a memory entered Owen's mind. He was no longer inside the mansion. He was standing on a battlefield. Smoke covered the sky. Soldiers were screaming. A younger Captain Lucien Blackwood was standing in front of his army. But this time Owen saw something different. Something nobody knew. Lucien was not searching for treasure. He was protecting something. A secret hidden beneath the mansion. A secret that could destroy anyone who discovered it. The soldiers who betrayed him were not after gold. They wanted the power hidden under Redwood Hill Manor. A dark force buried beneath the earth. A force that could give people endless life. But only at a terrible price. Lucien refused to use it. He wanted the secret destroyed. His own soldiers betrayed him because they wanted immortality. They cut off his head and forced him into the curse. But before dying, Lucien used the last of his strength to lock the darkness beneath the mansion. The memory changed. Owen saw the soldiers entering the basement. They opened the hidden chamber. One by one they touched the dark power. And one by one they disappeared. Their bodies remained, but their souls became trapped inside the mansion forever. Owen returned to reality. The headless soldier stood before him, but now he understood. The ghost was not the true monster. The mansion was. A whisper came from the walls. Do not believe him. Owen looked around. The headless soldier slowly turned toward the ceiling, as if he heard something too. Then the mansion shook violently. The floor cracked open. The same blue fire that burned beneath the manor rose through the cracks. The walls began screaming with hundreds of voices. Victims from the past. People who entered and never escaped. Their voices filled the hall. Help us. Save us. Run. Owen looked at the headless soldier. For a moment he thought the ghost was going to attack him. But instead, the soldier stepped between Owen and the darkness, protecting him. The sword in his hand began glowing with blue light. The entire mansion trembled. A deeper voice came from beneath the floor. You failed once again, Lucien. Owen froze. The voice was not coming from the soldier. It was coming from the mansion itself. The walls opened like they were breathing. A huge shadow formed behind them. Something older than the ghost. Something that had been controlling everything from the beginning. Jake's voice suddenly echoed from inside the soldier. Owen, you need to leave. Owen looked shocked. The ghost knew his name. How do you know me? The soldier remained silent. Then Jake's voice returned. Because I was once standing where you are now. The shadow beneath the mansion grew larger. The blue flames surrounded them. And the mansion spoke again. 2 souls have entered. Only one will leave. The ground opened beneath Owen's feet. And from the darkness below, hundreds of hands reached upward, trying to pull him into the forgotten basement. The headless soldier grabbed Owen's arm, trying to save him. But the mansion was stronger. Then Owen noticed something carved into the stone floor. A message written by the previous victims. Not a warning. A plan. A way to destroy Redwood Hill Manor forever. But to complete it, someone had to sacrifice their soul. Owen looked at the words, then looked at the headless soldier. He finally understood. The mansion was not looking for a victim anymore. It was looking for a successor, and only one person could stop the curse. Owen stared at the message carved into the stone floor. The letters were old and almost impossible to read, but the meaning was clear. The curse could only be broken by someone who was willing to give up their own life. Not someone who wanted to escape, not someone who wanted power, someone who was ready to sacrifice everything. Owen looked at the headless soldier standing beside him. For the first time, he did not see a monster. He saw a prisoner, a soul trapped inside a nightmare for more than a century. Jake's voice came through the empty space. I tried to fight it, but the mansion always wins. Owen looked at him. You are Jake. The soldier slowly moved his headless body downward. A strange silence followed. Then the voice answered, I was. Owen felt a chill run through his body. How long have you been trapped here? The blue flames around them grew stronger. The mansion answered instead. Long enough to forget who he was. The walls started moving. The hallway behind them stretched into darkness. The mansion was changing again, trying to separate them. Owen held onto the stone wall. What do we do? Jake lifted his sword and pointed toward the basement. The heart of the mansion is below us. Destroy it, and the curse ends. Owen looked at the dark opening beneath the floor. And what happens to you? A long pause filled the room. Jake finally answered, I disappear. Before Owen could respond, the mansion exploded with a powerful force. The entire hall shook. The portraits on the walls screamed. The windows shattered. A wave of darkness moved toward them. Jake pushed Owen away. Run. Owen fell to the ground as the shadow passed between them. For a moment he saw thousands of faces inside that darkness. Every person who had ever entered Redwood Hill Manor. Every missing traveler. Every lost soul. All trapped inside the mansion. The shadow formed into a terrifying figure. A creature made of smoke and bones. It had no face, only a giant empty hole where its head should be. Owen realized something horrifying. Captain Blackwood was never the headless monster. The true monster was the thing that created the curse. The thing living beneath the mansion. The creature moved toward Jake. You were supposed to replace him. You were supposed to continue the search. Jake stood still. For the first time, he looked fearless. Number. I was supposed to end it. The creature laughed. You are only a memory wearing a body. You are nothing. Jake raised his sword. The blue flame grew brighter. 100 years ago I failed, but today, one choose differently. The creature attacked. The entire mansion shook as the two forces collided. Owen watched from the floor. The headless soldier fought the darkness with everything he had. Each strike of his sword created waves of blue light. But the creature was stronger. It grabbed Jake and threw him across the room. The sword flew from his hand. The creature moved closer. You cannot destroy me. I am the fear of every person who enters this house. I am the reason they never leave. Suddenly Owen noticed something. The carved message on the floor was glowing. There was one final line hidden beneath the dust. The curse survives only when someone believes it is real. Owen understood. The creature was not powered by death. It was powered by fear. Every visitor who entered the mansion gave it strength. Every person who believed the legend kept it alive. Owen stood up. He grabbed the old sword from the floor. The creature turned toward him. A human thinks he can fight me. Owen looked directly at the darkness. You are not a legend. You are not a monster. You are just a parasite hiding inside an old house. The creature screamed. The walls shook violently. The blue flames turned black. Owen felt his body becoming weaker. The mansion was trying to control his mind. Suddenly memories started disappearing. His childhood, his family, his friends. Everything began fading. The creature whispered, soon you will forget yourself. Soon you will become part of me. Owen almost dropped the sword. Then he heard a voice. A familiar voice. Jake, remember who you are. Owen looked toward the headless soldier. Jake was standing again. Weak, broken, but still fighting. You are not chosen because you are perfect. You are chosen because you can choose. Owen tightened his grip on the sword. He ran toward the center of the basement, where the blue fire burned beneath the mansion. The creature chased him. The entire house screamed. Stop. You cannot destroy me. Owen reached the fire. The sword began glowing. He understood what he had to do. But before he could strike, a hand grabbed his shoulder. He turned around. Jake was standing behind him. For the first time, a face appeared on the headless body. But it was not Jake's face. It was Captain Lucien Blackwood's original face. A tired old man finally free from the curse. He looked at Owen and smiled. Thank you. Then Lucien pushed the sword forward with him. Together they struck the heart of Redwood Hill Manor. A massive explosion of blue light filled the basement. The creature screamed louder than anything Owen had ever heard. The mansion began collapsing. The walls cracked. The floors broke. The shadows disappeared. One by one, the trapped souls were released. Hundreds of figures appeared in the light. Finally free, Owen fell to the ground. The last thing he saw was Captain Lucien Blackwood standing peacefully. No longer a monster. No longer a prisoner. Just a soldier finally going home. Then everything went dark when Owen opened his eyes. He was lying outside the ruins of Redwood Hill Manor. The mansion was gone. Only ashes remained. The sunrise appeared over Pine Ridge. For the first time in more than 100 years, the forest was silent. But this silence felt peaceful, not terrifying. Owen looked around. He searched for Jake, for Captain Blackwood, but nobody was there. Only one thing remained, an old military badge lying in the grass. Captain Lucien Blackwood. Owen picked it up. Then he noticed something carved on the back, a final message. The curse is broken, but the story is not over. Because deep beneath the ground, something else was still awake. And somewhere far away, another abandoned house opened its doors for the first time, waiting for someone new to enter. So this is the story. Follow Nightmare Files for more horror and creepy stories.